here. So, yeah, we'll try to get as much engagement and involvement as we can. But for now, we'll let Todd get started and work through the slides.
All right. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Um, just a little background on me. I spent 10 years at Grubb and Ellis, which became Newmark. And then I joined Equity Office, Sam Zell's REIT, who owned the office buildings all over the country. Got up to about 100 million square feet. And their model really was to hire brokers with at least 10 years experience to go in-house and be leasing directors for their portfolio. And they really assembled just a top-notch list of brokers all over the country, and most of whom were in premier markets: Boston, New York, Philly, DC, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Atlanta, Dallas, Denver, you name it. And at one point, given Equity Office was publicly traded, they hired a consulting firm, Bain, to study the entire organization top to bottom. And their conclusion was you've got to do everything you can to lease vacant space. You're paying taxes on it, you're paying for expenses. And they didn't know anything really about real estate, but they dove really deeply into the whole process of leasing space. And the net of it all was, so a prospect is going to tour 5 to 8 buildings, RFP out. And, distilled, they were like, well, it sounds like you've got to make the short list. How does that process work? So we really did a deep dive into how to show space. In that first tour, you're either completely out of luck, or best case, you beg your way back onto the short list, or maybe another opportunity, another building on the short list drops out, and you can, beg your way back onto the short list. And then you're operating from a position of weakness, right? So we got training. We did a 3-day meeting where we got videotaped. We had to write our elevator pitch, and we had all these professionals that discussed the best way to show space and to conduct a tour. And I like to say that a tour starts when the broker calls you, the rep broker calls you and says, "Hey, are you available next Tuesday to show that 20,000 foot block on the third floor," or whatever, or your 50,000 square foot warehouse or whatever address. And we're so excited, and maybe we ask a couple of questions. What's their occupancy timing? What's important to them? I'm sure most of you ask, several good questions on that call, but I would challenge you to ask more questions. And if the broker representing the tenant has an exclusive, frequently they'll tell you who it is, maybe where they're located. Um, what's most important to them, obviously occupancy timing. And sometimes they're reluctant to share any information, and I understand that. But to the extent that you can ask more questions, one of the most important things to them, I know many of you work in industrial, so is it clear height, column spacing, dock doors, outdoor tractor trailer storage, whatever are the appropriate, salient questions, ask those. And here's something very few listing brokers ask: how many people are going to be on the tour? Right? You really want to ask how many people are going to be on the tour and what are their roles. The real estate director fly in from another city, and then you'd have the local managing partner, and then maybe that person's office manager, what have you. So know how many people are coming on the tour and what their roles are. Um, and you want to be in a position to ask good questions when they show up, right? Um, and you don't want to be a robot and when they show up for the tour and you just start talking about your building. You want to thank their time. You want to, how much time do you have? Do I have 20 minutes? Do I have a half an hour? Whatever it is. And mention something about their company if you know who they are. Oh, I saw a recent press release, or I know you're in such and such a building and you're growing. Um, I we like your company a lot. We think you'd be a great fit. The landlord is excited you're here. Say something about them and not just, talk about your building. Um, I think that goes a long way that you've done some research. And then you might say, look, I understand what's most important to you is clear height, column spacing, number of dock doors, outdoor tractor trailer storage. Is there anything else that's really important to you before we start the tour? Right? To show you're interested, you want to engage with them, and you're truly concerned about their needs, right? Very few listing brokers do that, and it really can make a difference. Um, and then, you got to make it memorable, right? You want to have good handouts, your flyer, you should have a fact sheet for your building and know it inside and out. Clear height, column spacing, dock doors, limitations on outdoor storage. Um, in office, it might be parking ratio, or in a downtown high rise, where a lot of my experience was, it's, is there parking? If there's not parking, how close to mass transit? I had several listings that didn't have parking garages, but I had a survey of the 5 closest garages, how many spaces, what was the hourly rate, daily rate, monthly, and monthly reserve, right? So you want to have all the answers at your fingertips. So have good handouts, have a floor plan, um, of the space, and basically know your building inside and out. If it's warehouse, industrial building, when was the roof last replaced, right? Is it sprinkler, right? You really want to know everything about the systems of the building, um, and have that at the ready. Have all your handouts printed, with graphics. Perhaps you have a setup inside the building where you've got a fold out table with the brochures and flyers, or even, if it's a big space, you might have a couple of easels with, your features and benefits of your building mounted on a board, maybe an aerial map, showing access to, major thoroughfares, um, all the important elements that they might be concerned about. Um, and then, it's important when you're talking about the features of the building that you sell the benefits. So many brokers just talk about the features, but then they don't actually then kind of close the thought with the benefits. All right, we're fully sprinkler. That's going to save on your insurance cost. Um, the roof was done 2 years ago. It's got a 20-year life expectancy, so you're never going to have to worry about the roof, and it's fully warranted. Um, in an office building, maybe that's got good elevation, with the destination dispatch system, that means that you're going to get to your floor more quickly. And when you're ready to leave at the end of the day, you're going to get back down to the lobby and save time. So really sell features and benefits. That really strengthens, what you're trying to suggest as solutions for their requirement. Um, can you scroll up or scroll down a little bit further? Thank you. So, again, going back to researching the deal, um, ask all these questions and how many people are coming and what the roles are. Um, and frequently, I've seen it so many times when I'm representing a tenant, the brokers will focus on who they think the decision maker is. Well, you've got to focus on everybody on the tour and go out of your way to focus on who you think the least important person is. Maybe it's the office manager. Well, they're there for a reason. They're a decision influencer, and you want to make them feel welcome, respected, and ask them what's most important to you. A lot of times, like the national real estate director is concerned about, um, cost, um, maybe location, um, maybe you know how much TI the landlord's going to offer, what have you. The local managing partner is concerned about his view or what his commute is like. And then the office manager is concerned about where their people going to eat, how close is mass transit, where are my people going to park, right? So you've got to know your audience and try and address what you think their concerns are. Um, and don't just focus on the decision maker. If only one person shows up representing the prospect, that's easy, right? But if there's multiple people, ask each of them what's most important to them and then try and address that. Um, and then preparing for the showing, you got to have floor plans and all your marketing flyers. Um, in office, you know, selective demo, maybe a fresh coat of paint, removing the old carpet, white box of space. And some landlords are reluctant to do that, and that's out of your control. But to the extent your landlord can make the space clean, um, it makes a huge difference because that's how tenants think that they're going to be treated by how the building shows, right? Again, this is written more for office. Make sure the blinds are up and the lights are on. Um, that's certainly true in industrial or warehouse. Make sure the lights are on. You don't want to open the doors and the space is dark, right? Um, we like to send the property managers an email with 24 hours notice to make sure the space is clean and there's not a bunch of debris in there. Obviously make sure you've got your keys or your pass cards. If it's a big inspection, um, have the client's name if you can get it and lift their logo and put it on the front of your flyer. um, it shows, that you've done your research, you really care about them, and it really indicates how they're going to be treated going forward. Um, if it's a big group, um, and this may be overkill, but I'll leave it to your judgment. Maybe if it's a hot day in the summer, you've got, some cold drinks, whether it's water or lemonade or something. Um, Maybe it's, some snacks. And frequently they won't even eat any of it, but it shows you've gone the extra mile, and really indicates how they're going to be treated if they, you know, end up leasing space in your building. Um, you know, if it's a second tour, and it's decision time, you know, definitely want to have some refreshments. Um, even if it's just cold water, right? Um, but I've gone so far, if it was a really big deal, to have hot coffee, bagels, whatever. And it just goes a long way in showing how they're going to be treated. Um, Go down to greeting in the lobby, please. So again, when they show up, don't just start talking about your building. Say, listen, your broker, you have a great broker. We have a good working relationship. He's told me about some of the things that are really important to you. Um, you know, clear height, column spacing, dock doors, whatever. In office, maybe it's parking, views, access to mass transit. And I'm going to address all those things, but I want to make sure that I touch on all the things that are most important to you. And then we'll go look at the space. How does that sound? And this is basic sales, try and get them to start saying yes. You know, um, I'd like to talk more about your requirement, make sure I'm covering all the things that are most important to you, and then we'll go look at some space. How does that sound? Of course, they're going to nod their head, right? And then, ask them, what else you need to address and try and pry out of them, more things that you can address. And then you summarize your understanding of the requirement and then start discussing how your building and all its attributes are going to satisfy the requirement. Um, I say here, always be attentive to non-decision makers, right? They're on the tour for a reason. They're decision influencers. Decision influencers. Don't ignore them, right? Make them feel like they're part of the process. Um, and then again, this is written for office. I say always have a finished space you can take them to. Maybe a tenant who likes to show off their space that you can pop in and show them the newest space that you've built. Um, I'm sure many of you do that. And then you've got to develop an elevator pitch, right? This is your 20 to 30-second pitch on all the great attributes of your building. We're very close to this major highway interchange. We have abundant tractor trailer storage. We've got the clear height you need. Um, we have, ESFR sprinklers. We got a rubber membrane roof that you don't have to worry about. Um, whatever your salient points are, have that pitch down so that you don't stumble in your words. Really memorize that. I mean, I've gotten here, this is kind of getting cute, but I would literally get on the elevator with the group. And you know how when you get on an elevator, everybody faces forward at the doors. Well, I'd get in and stand in front of the doors and face them where you've got a captive audience and you would give them your elevator pitch and look them in the eye. Very, very compelling. And then after the tour, you want to follow up with the broker. How'd we do? Um, if there were any questions that you didn't know the answer to, that can be an opportunity. Follow up right away. Get that answer. Make sure the broker gets it to the client. Ask what are the next steps? What else can you do? Um, you know, and this isn't always appropriate, but maybe ask if your landlord can send a note directly to the prospect and thank them for coming to the building. Think about everything you can do to stand out. That's going to, make that prospect think, this is a building we want to be in. We're going to be treated the right way. They know what they're doing. They're professional, and it starts to make the process much more easy, and you're going to float to the top of the short list. Um, and then this note beyond the tour: always have accurate plans of existing conditions. Always know the square foot. Um, here's a accounting firm, and then, here's an open plan that, shows, a bunch of workstations and a high density environment. Maybe you've got a clean white box with no office. Well, maybe you've done a test fit for a firm where they drop in 2,000 square feet of office. We'll have that, right? Say, look, we can build this amount of office. We're going to need a 5-year lease. We know you need a little office in your warehouse. We're happy to build that, and here's how that might look, right? So have good plans that show you're thinking and anticipating their needs. Um, and then the second or the final tour, it's time to go all out, right? Broker calls, you know, you're going to have 25 minutes. Ask for more time, right? But always ask for a little more time. Have refreshments. Um, you know, make sure that the property staff knows that you've got a big showing. Make sure the space is clean. Again, this is written for office where I'd make sure the security people at the front security desk know we've got a big group. It's important, and have them say hello and be involved, right? Because that shows how that client is going to be, that prospect is going to be treated if they come into the building. Um, what else? I mean, have colored rendered plans. That's going above and beyond, but we would do that sometimes and have colored rendered plans, which would show an office layout with muted colors. Obviously make sure the lights are on, the blinds are up, the space is clean. If it's a second tour, have copies of the proposal. A lot of times the prospect might not even get a copy of the proposal. They just might get a financial analysis of the economics. Make sure they see your proposal. And then I go further, you know, have each agent in your office that has a listing complete the following. You should have a thorough fact sheet with all the building systems, what your CAM, and triple net costs are, right? How the HVAC system works. In industrial, it's your power. Um, um, you know, know how the building operates. So have a thorough fact sheet. Have a thorough list of amenities, right? Here's all the places you can eat lunch. Um, where a local gyms are, right? Local hotels, whatever the case may be. We would try and have a colored map with the logos of all the restaurants and hotels, whatever the case may be, that shows the strength of your location. Um, if it was an office building and we didn't have parking, we survey the 5 closest garages and have all their parking rates, right? So you can check that box. Here's where you can park. Here's how much it's going to cost. Um, So and then you can use all this knowledge and then identify listings or other buildings in your market where they're not doing all this. And that can become a target, where if you can get in front of that landlord and say, look, this is what I'm doing every time a prospect shows up for a tour. Your brokers are not doing that. And you can really use this process and this criteria to identify potential other listings in the market where you can do a better job, showing space and making sure that landlord makes a short list and ultimately leases vacant space. So anyway, that's really the long and short of it. I really would like to open it up to questions. I know there's probably some senior CORFAC people that are on the call that are also experts at showing space, and love for them to add, comments if that makes sense.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, this has been really good. Joel has had some good feedback in the chat. Maybe he could chime in here with a few of his ideas.
Nothing I could ever add would steal the thunder from Mr. Monahan. Todd, you're great, man. I'm off camera. We've got a large part of our team here that's been listening, and everything you've shared has been spot on. And some of it has been an eye opener, even for those of us who have been doing this for a while, and good reminders as well. And I was just sitting here thinking of some ideas that I've had, or that I've done in the past, and I've shared those in the chat. Um, you know, Todd, when you do your qualifying prior to your tour, which is a great practice, sometimes it's revealed that, building signage is of paramount importance. And here in St. Louis, and probably like many other cities, we've got a couple of major thoroughfares where, they're littered with office buildings that face the highway, and there's lots of visibility because of it. And we've taken the opportunity on some of those buildings to, create a rendering, put a tenant's name atop the building, and then put it on an easel when they walk in the door, and that's always well received. Um, and then something I wish I had the bandwidth and resources to do more, but I have done in the past is Google. I don't even know if they make them anymore. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago, but there was something called a Google Cardboard where it was an actual cardboard VR headset, and we were marketing a 170,000 square foot office building. We had a big tenant come through that was looking for 90,000 or 100,000 feet. We pulled a rendering into a VR platform, and then we were able to share the link with them when they walked in. They slid their phone into the cardboard headset that was branded with our company, and they were able to, virtually walk this gray shell of a space that now had finishes virtually. And they were very apprehensive. There were some suits from New York, and once the first person put it on, they were like, wow, this is really cool. And then the rest of them did. And the next thing you know, they're all walking around in circles in the metaverse. And I think that is a big part of why we ultimately won the deal. So yeah, just some great thoughts. I thought I'd share a few of my own.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great. Yeah, I mean, if you can render a client's name on the building, if they're big enough to justify it, that goes a long way. That's a great strategy and a great practice. And then, yeah, the goggles with the virtual tour. I mean, I didn't even mention that, but yeah, that's if you can have something like that that makes your tour stand out, that's huge, right? It's all about making the short list and being unique, right? So when they finished the tour, they were like, "Oh yeah, that building was awesome, and that tour was awesome, and you know, um, you've gone the extra mile and really stood out. That's huge."
I,
Um,
I don't know if
you
it's
know, I,
possible to
I
do
for
this,
all
Todd.
the young brokers, I would say, you know, sit with your building engineers and really, creating your fact sheet, really try and understand how your systems work and how old, the roof is, whatever the case may be. And you'll learn, through that process. And then, you'll really know how your building works and maybe perhaps what its deficiencies are. And maybe you can, you know, approach the landlord like, look, this is hurting us. Um, vis-a-vis our competition, and we really should think about upgrading ABC, whatever it is. Um, so, you really got to know how the building operates.
Hey Todd, last time you presented, you left us with some takeaways, some documents and things we could use or adapt for our own. Do you have any kind of a template checklist for these building specifications that you're talking about that you've really liked over the years?
Yeah, I could send some things to you, Ben, that you could disseminate. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be cool. Just a good starting point for everybody. It's probably something that AI can generate if we asked, give us a checklist for listing a commercial property. But I think seeing it from someone with years of success would be nice versus just having AI spit something out.
yeah, I'll work on that.
Cool. Um, and then do you, along those same lines, have you ever maybe created a version of that that is tenant facing? So maybe to go along with or supplement the marketing flyer that you would generally have, just maybe a branded kind of checklist or just fact sheet, if you will, so they can just kind of take a glance at the building and see all that. I mean, you might integrate that standard into all of your listing flyers. Just curious if you leave them with something physical to take back rather than just remembering everything you told them about the building.
Yeah, well, that fact sheet should be in the flyer for the building, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, all the features and benefits. It should be part of the general marketing flyer. And in some cases, you might have that blown up as just a separate, board or a separate page to hand out. So they don't have to leaf through a 5-page flyer.
Exactly.
And, it's got all the bells and whistles of the building and the key features and benefits. And I keep harping on benefits. Too often we just list features. But you really want that final, 3 to 5 words after the feature. What's the true benefit, to the tenant? Um, you know, Safety, security, more, creature comfort, um, enhanced productivity, whatever it is, right? Um, Now, like in office buildings, a big thing is HVAC filtration. We use HEPA 13 filters. Well, the average layman doesn't know what that means. That means you have cleaner air, fresher air. Um, Maybe it's more fresh air exchanges, so your people are going to be more productive throughout the day. Um, again, harp on the benefits, not just the features. But I'll work on some deliverables, Ben, that we can get out to everybody.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I think that was a big distinction that you made. I think we're all juggling different listings. Some of us work, for landlords as well as tenants. So we kind of end up having just all this information packed on our brain. We have calls, meetings, and we rush to a building. It's not always fresh in our minds. So I think taking the extra time and taking the extra step is for me, a big takeaway from this call of just creating the space to sell the space and not just rattle off the statistics like it's one more transaction.
Yeah. Someone just I saw in the chat, an industrial space, have a couple of the dock doors open, right? You walk in the front of the building, um, and maybe the lights are on, but it's nice to have a couple of the rear dock doors already up. Lets in a little more natural light, um, and it's a natural, you know, attraction where at some point everyone's going to walk back and look at the loading. Already have one of the dock doors up. I think that's a good tip.
While this is Jonathan in Chicago, while it's not real estate specific, Diane Harris and I do a lot of tours of hotels where we're going to do our conferences. And quite often when we walk into a hotel sleeping room, they'll have the CORFAC logo on the TV, or they'll have it on a big screen in the lobby. But they often will have hotel swag, which will have, a notebook with whatever hotel's name is. And often they'll have stuff like cookies and things with the CORFAC logo on it. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's right. It's customer service, and it's trying to go to the next level to stand out, right? So if you go see 4 hotels in a visit, you're going to remember the one that had cookies with the CORFAC logo, right? And look for 800,000 square foot office tower. You can have all kinds of swag. You can have umbrellas, with the building address or logo, right? But if you got a 30,000 square foot industrial space, maybe you can't justify um, that level of swag or branding for that building. But do what you can. You can generate a lot just on your laptop, with good handouts, and maybe some cold water, or hot chocolate, or whatever it is, hot coffee in the winter. Um, just do a little bit extra to stand out on that tour.
Hey Todd, it's Jackie DeLay. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Jackie.
Hi guys. Speaking of natural light and just being extra, I think one of the most important things before you begin a tour is to at least turn every blind or shade, but I would actually recommend opening them completely on every single window in a building. I mean, I will show up 30 minutes early and sprint around and open every shade to show the maximum natural light you can get in a space, especially when it's empty and it feels a little sterile. I just find that so important. And there's no tenant I know that doesn't value that, and we can always turn down the natural light by filming the windows, window treatments, etc. But I find that can make or break a tour. And I'm always amazed by my colleagues on some pretty big tours. Colleagues that not just anywhere. I mean, at the big brokerages, this seems like so obvious to me. I'll show up and all the blinds are closed and it's a dark dungeon. Sometimes the lights aren't even on, or lights are broken. Light bulbs are out and they don't even know until they try. Just walk in the room. And that distracts from the conversations you should be having anyway, but it also is not inviting and it doesn't show off the space properly. I'm sure you've
That's
seen
a
that many
great point.
times.
I've had situations where I walk in, 20 minutes early and there's glue traps with cockroaches, dead cockroaches, and I'll scoop them up and throw them in the trash can. I don't want that prospect to see, that there are, cockroaches in the building. Um, it little things like that go a long way. I'll move debris, try and create a walking path if it's that bad. Because sometimes, a space is in the process of being demolished or what have you. Um, you know, just go the extra mile, right? No question about it.
Todd, I remember driving over to show some space, and there might have been, no exaggeration, a dozen dead cockroaches in the space. And there was a dustpan, but no broom. But a vendor had left a postcard under the door. So I had to fold the postcard in half to make a broom and clean them up. And I remember thinking, this job is not nearly as glamorous as I thought it was before I started.
Yep.
They
Yep.
also, not because of the cockroaches, but they didn't lease the space either. So
Well, at least you gave it your best shot, right? Yeah, that's all those little, efforts make a difference. It'll pay off. But yeah, definitely get there early, walk your space, think about how is the prospect going to look at it. Hopefully you can get your landlord to make sure it's clean, open the blinds, raise the dock door. Um, whatever you can do to kind of make it a more enjoyable tour makes a huge difference. And if I was leasing space in a downtown high rise, I'd stand out on the side and watch them walk, assuming it wasn't raining. Um, in industrial warehouse space, you could be out front. A lot of times if it's a multi-tenant flex building, they're not quite sure what suite, right? So be out front, be on the lookout for the broker. Make sure they know exactly where to go. You don't want them. Joe and I have shown up for some tours and we weren't sure what suite we were going to see. And then that makes us look bad as the tenant rep broker, because it's like we don't know the building that we're taking them to. So, be very visible and offer a warm greeting to the broker and the prospect when they show up.
this is great, Todd. Any other questions while we have Todd here?
And I'm always available. Look, if somebody wants to shoot me an email or call me, please do so. I'm here to help. And, this whole effort for next gen is to help, the younger, less experienced brokers become better professionals. And we want to share best practices and, not just rely on people in your own office, but all the CORFAC expertise around the country, around the world for that matter. And so, rely on me. Happy to help any way I can.
Thank you.
And I would just wrap up by saying, Todd, Ben, Jackie, thanks for doing this. And as a network, we're trying to do at least one Zoom call a month. Sometimes we do 2. So if anybody out there today has any ideas, any recommendations, please share it with Jennifer, Diane, or myself. We're always looking for new stuff and staying innovative. So, and I hope a lot of you are considering going to Amsterdam in a couple of months. Rumor has it that First Capital Property Group is sending 9 people. So the gauntlet has been laid.
Wow.
And the challenge is on. So sign up soon. And thank you.
Before
be there.
before everyone logs off, a couple of quick things. In just a second, would everyone mind, just whoever's able to, turn your camera on for just 10 seconds? We're going to get a screenshot of everybody who came today so we can put this out on LinkedIn and hype up CORFAC. Thank Todd for everything that he shared. So we'll get a quick screenshot of the group. And then while everyone's working on turning their camera on that can, another quick commercial besides Amsterdam. So the next gen effort that's going to be rolled out is going to be the mentorship program. So there was a lot of conversation about this in LA at our last conference. Seemed like a lot of excitement. So I'll just tease the idea that right now we do have 11 senior either principals or very experienced brokers in the network who want to mentor, and we're finalizing an outline of that program. So you'll be hearing about that soon if you'd like to be a mentee, what that program is going to look like. But I think it's definitely something you're going to want to apply to and throw your name in the hat, because there's a lot of what Todd's sharing, and it's going to be more dedicated, one-on-one or maybe small group time where it's a topic, but there's also more of a back and forth and an open forum to ask questions and get advice. So just be on the lookout for that. It should be rolling out pretty soon. All right,
Great.
everybody say cheese on 3. I'm going to get a screenshot, and then we will let you guys get back to your day. Actually, how about this? Instead of cheese, we'll say thanks, Todd. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks.
All right, cool. Look for that on LinkedIn. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And
All
then
right. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Todd.
Jennifer, can you
You're
put
welcome.
the title slide back up real quick? Yeah.
Sorry, Ben.
What's up?
Give me back here.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry.
It'll show, well, since we didn't get everybody's camera on, it'll show a little better than some black squares at the bottom, but I'll still put that
Yeah,
on the
just give me
post.
a second. I'm toggling between a few windows here and need to.
I know. It's crazy when you have Zoom and then the chat and then you get an email pop up and it's like 11 screens. So I get it.
It totally is. And yeah, we updated Zoom, or my computer, we did some updates on our computers, and Zoom's just been a little bit challenging since. So
Yeah,
I gotta get my settings figured out here. Okay, hold on one sec.
no problem.
Here
No
we
problem.
go. There it is.
Perfect. Give me 1 second. All right. And cool. I got it. Tell me to zoom in more. All right, let me do one more and then we'll turn it off and we'll be good to go. Give me 1 second. Yeah, no, it like fills the screen a little more. Why is it going away at the bottom? There we go. All right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. All right, got what I needed. I will tag CORFAC when I post. Oh, I think you're muted.
I can send you the graphic too if you need it, but yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks
great.
so much, Ben.
Yeah, of course. See you soon.
Appreciate it. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.